Well, we have a tough game here tomorrow. Georgia's playing very, very good basketball and have obviously gotten off to a great start in the league. With the win at Missouri and then Alabama on Saturday. They're doing an exceptional job of rebounding, getting to the free throw line, executing what they do. So this is a team right now that's playing outstanding. Right as the league has started.
Our first question is from Chip Howard of KZNE Radio and College Station.
Billy, I know it's really early, but do you have any feel for what this league is going to be like overall? It's 2 games in. It's really jumbled right now.
Yeah, I think like I said last week, I haven't had a chance to see everybody play in our league, so it's hard to say. I do know that, when you get into conference play, it's always challenging. It's always difficult. I think the one thing that gets, maybe lost a little bit is, you look, and I think Georgia's a perfect example of this. You look at the development and the growth that teams make during the course of the year, and teams get better. And I think teams in this league going through January, February are going to get better. I don't think really teams stay the same. I think that's a credit to the kids in this league and also to the coaching in the league. So, for me to say how this is going to shake out with 16 more games to say is probably very difficult just because I haven't had a chance to see everybody play. But I do know being in this league, as long as I've been in the league, this league is very difficult and challenging.
How much does it help to have some veteran guys like you do?
Well, I think we've got some guys that have obviously been through it. They've been through the league. They know what to expect. They've been on the road to different places. They have an idea of what the league's about. I think they understand the grind and how long the league schedule is. From that standpoint, I think it helps just having awareness. But I also think too that when you have older guys, they've got to be willing to go through the process. And sometimes the process of every day in practice and those things can become tedious. Kind of an attitude of I know what I need to do, I know what this is all about, and then I think you become stagnant. You maybe don't improve or develop like you'd like to. So, on one hand, I think the experience part can be good, provided those guys are willing to put forth the price and pay the effort that goes into the process of trying to prepare from week to week.
Thank you.
Next up is Pat Forty of Yahoo Sports.
Hey, Billy, how are you?
Good, Pat.
Good. A little bit of a kind of broad question here, but you are the only active coach under 50 with a national championship, and in recent years we've had guys maybe a little bit older in their 60s winning championships, and I guess I'm just wondering if you think there's a greater longevity for top-level coaches now that's maybe blocked some of the younger guys from getting to that level, or is there maybe a gap in the quality of coaches coming up, or if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know, Pat. I think that's probably a tough one to answer. One of the things I do think, and I think, I probably speak because we've talked about this as coaches, in a lot of our spring meeting stuff. I think one of the things that's really happened, which is unfortunate, is there was an avenue for myself 25, 26 years ago to get into college coaching. You were a graduate assistant, and, you really, even my first year at Kentucky, I was able to do everything. The only thing I wasn't allowed to do was to go on the road and recruit. But I could make recruiting phone calls. I could go on the floor and do individual instruction. I was active in practice. I broke down tape. Back then, you were allowed to in-person scout. You could pick up and leave an in-person scout. And, right now, those positions are really kind of all gone by the wayside. And really, in a lot of ways, this administrative role that's now in college basketball, it does nothing to prepare any of these young guys to be a coach because they can't make recruiting phone calls. They can't watch tape, present tape. They can't go down the court and coach. They're just in an administrative role. And I think we're doing a disservice to a lot of these young guys that are looking to get into college coaching the right way, and giving them the opportunity to really learn what goes on inside and get a chance to grow and develop. And I think that maybe from a certain standpoint, the coaching part of it, of being on the floor and dealing with players and dealing with individual instruction and player development and breaking down film and having to deal with, the in practice of dealing with a player that maybe is in a bad mood or is not working hard enough, and you get on the floor and have to do that. I mean, what's happening now is guys are getting jobs a lot of times based on maybe players that they can bring in there. And I'm not so sure that we're, really helping a lot of these young guys. I think when you look around the country, there's a lot of really, really great young coaches out there. But I do know 25 years ago when I started, and I think probably a lot of the coaches in this league when we started, you had a great entry-level position. I mean, I think about, for me as a player, having Coach Pitino, Stu Jackson, Gordy Chiesa, and Jeff Van Gundy, every day around me as a player. And then my first coaching job at Kentucky, I've got Coach Pitino, I've got Ralph Willard, I've got Herb Sendek, I've got Tubby Smith. I mean, I was exposed to some unbelievable experience and knowledge as a young guy that even at 23, 24 years old, I was exposed to every facet of coaching at a very, very young age, and I don't think that happens now anymore.
Mm-hmm. Is that the kind of thing like the NABC could maybe see if they could put forth a recommendation to get that sort of position reestablished? Or
I think it's been talked about, Pat, but here's the problem, and I really don't have a problem with this. There's some guys that have taken maybe some of these graduate assistant roles that used to be there, and they would go out and they'd hire maybe a former head coach. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think there's value on having, former head coaches on your staff. And I think that position should be used how everybody on their staff or however the head coach or the school wants to use it. But I think because that was the perception of you're using an entry-level position and you're giving the entry-level position to a guy that's been a head coach, that's not how it should be used. Or you end up giving that position to somebody because in recruiting they've kind of helped you get a player, and they don't want to do that. So there's some things that we've talked about, but I think what a lot of people are worried about is that position not being used for the growth and development of maybe a young guy coming up, through the coaching ranks. So I think that's where, some of the disconnect has been.
Next up is Andrew Wagaman of the Virginia Pilot.
Hey, Billy. I was wondering, how have you seen Dorian Finney-Smith develop, on and off court since he arrived in Gainesville?
I think he continues to get better. He's a guy that has got a really good feel of how to play. He's long, he's athletic, he can put it on the floor, he can shoot, he really can rebound. And I think, being a freshman in the ACC and then having to sit out last year, that's probably helped his development, to a certain extent in terms of understanding our system, what we're doing, also understanding what it's like to play at this level. But he continues to get better. I still think he can get better and improve. He obviously played pretty well in the game on Saturday against Arkansas, but he's also had some moments where he's been kind of up and down. So if we can get him to play consistently, I think that helps us.
Yeah, I think you mentioned after Saturday's game that playing through mistakes is the key for him. Could you just elaborate on why that's the case?
Well, I think the one thing with him is he's got a really good feel of how to play, and he is a guy that, if he does make a mistake, miss a shot, or things are not going well for him, he can really, really get down on himself. And he's not a kid that at all casts blame on anybody else. He really, I think, internally evaluates himself, which is a great thing, because he's never, ever finger-pointing. He's always a guy that's assuming responsibility. But he's got to understand that in assuming responsibility, you got to learn from whatever it is you're going through and then move to the next thing. And I think that's an area that as a coach, I think I can try to help him with.